Well, good morning. Who is doing well? I'm Lou, one of the pastors here, and we are day 12 of our Lenten devotional um, out of this book we've been preaching through called God on Mute. If you haven't already, I encourage you, go check it out. We've been posting, I'll actually post it here in a second, the link to buy it on Amazon. But it's by Pete Craig, and so we've been going through this 40-day devotional, and tracking along and preaching through the series and using their small group curriculum, and it's fantastic. And so I've said it before, but the devotional works in this pattern. It uses the acronym PRAY. So every day we're supposed to pause, to stop, to really step outside of our normal routine, our normal patterns, what we're doing, and take a moment. We're gonna pause each morning. We're going to reflect on what God is telling us, what God is doing, what God is calling us to. We're going to ask a question. And so we're going to ask, God, what are you showing me today? What are you calling me to as I go about my day? Maybe ask a question about what are the things that I feel are important today. And then we're going to yield to God's will. And so we're following this whole pattern each and every day through the 40 days of Lent as we go towards Easter. And so today is an interesting day as we talk about, Pete Craig talks about learning to lament. Now, lament's one of those strange words that we don't necessarily have a whole lot of grasp on in our world today. I was trying to think of some examples, but it's deep sorrow. It's almost regret. It's almost sadness over what has happened or what's going on. It's this deep sorrow in our world. And so I thought about, what are the things in our world we lament? Sometimes I lament opening Facebook. Sometimes I lament the last thing I ate, right? But it's bigger than that. It's a deeper word. And so Pete Craig goes into it this way. As we pause this morning, he lifts up one of the Psalms, and I want to read it to you. It's Psalm 5, 1 through 2. It says this. It says, "Listen to my words, Lord. Consider my lament. Hear my cry. Hear my cry for help, my King and my God. For to you I pray." He lifts up Psalm 89, 46 through 49. It says this, "How long, O Lord? How long will you hide yourself forever? How long will your wrath burn like fire? Remember how fleeting is my life for the fertility you have created in all humanity. Who can live and not see death? Who can escape the power of the grave? Lord, where is your former great love, which in your faithfulness you swore to David?" P. Greg talks about this idea that struggle and prayer, struggle and worry, struggle and trouble in our world tend to go together quite a bit. In fact, in Scripture, we see lament as almost a spiritual growing in Scripture. It's not a complaining. It's not a it's not an anger. It's not a frustration. It's more of a growing in faith. As we look around, we see where the world is. We see the things that maybe we're not okay with. We see the things that we know is not part of God's coming kingdom, and we lament. And so he says, as we pause and reflect today, we should be asking some questions. He says, is it natural to ask God to help? And I think it is. I think when we come times of worry and trouble, when there's difficult things in our life, we tend to go to God. We tend to ask. And he says it's entirely understandable. It's an instinct when we're confronted with difficulties. I know when I come across things that are difficult, I try and find a solution. That's how my mind works, right? Here's the problem. Where's the solution? In fact, I do that with lots of things in my life, but there are things that don't have solutions, or at least ones that I can find. And that leads me to a time of sorrow, sadness, right? Things that I wish I could fix in my own life, in the world around me, things that I wish were different. Pete Greig says that leads us to lament, to leaning into asking God, to turning to Him, knowing that there are things beyond our control that we're really passionate about, and we're wondering, God, can you step into this? God, we're so saddened by this. We're so deeply moved. We have so much sorrow. Maybe for you this last week, you've seen something on the news. Maybe there's something going on in your family. Maybe there's something going on, that you're totally disconnected from, but you're invested in. Maybe a news story from across the country, a friend who's going through something. And through this trouble, you're wondering, what can we do? There's so much pain. There's so much sorrow. There's so much anger. There's so many bad things happening in the world, and I just don't know what to do. And in Scripture, this leads people to lament. And so Pete Greig says this, ask God this. What does it mean for you to express your sadness to God? To give voice to disappointment, frustration, and fear, and even admit to yourself that it's bothered you so much? What does it mean to give voice to it? Now, we can be frustrated. I know I've gone through seasons where I've been angry and frustrated and worried, and I haven't said a thing to anyone. And it just sort of sits within me. It stews. It comes out in different places. And he says, what would it look like for you to actually voice that to God, to lament, to share, God, your troubles and your worries? And he lifts up this last thing in the yielding portion. Now, remember, we're this whole 40-day devotional is going through this last season of Jesus as he's getting ready for the cross. We're talking about yielding. What does it look like to yield? To say, God, not my will, but yours. And he lifts this up. It's called Fix Me, Jesus. It says, oh yes, fix me, Jesus, fix me. Fix me that I can walk on a little longer. Fix me so that I can pray on just a little bit harder. Fix me so that I can sing on just a little bit louder. Fix me so that I can go on despite the pain and fear, the doubt, and yes, the anger. I ask not that you take this cross from me, only that you give me the strength to continue carrying it onward till my dying day. Oh, fix me, Jesus, fix me. It's a powerful picture of living in that in-between, that tension of living in a world that's broken, where there's sorrow and anger, where there's destruction, where it seems like nothing is ever going to be right again. And yet that is the place that we find ourselves. That's where we find strength in our faith. And so what would it look like for us to use this idea of lament as a way of growing our faith during these 40 days of Lent? As we voice to God what it is that really bothers us, what it is that really brings us sadness and sorrow. What are the things that really we have trouble talking about because they're so destructive in our lives? The things that we see that we can't change that really bother us. And so this morning, this day, I encourage you to think through that. What would it look like for you to voice those things, for you to lament to God? And think of it not as a complaint session, not of a way of just sort of getting it off your chest, but as a way of growing spiritually, of having this conversation with God, of voicing those concerns and lifting it up to Him. My hope is that this series has been helpful. If you, again, I would encourage each and every one of you, if you haven't already, buy the book, God on Mute, Pete Greig. It's a fantastic book. Read through it. Join us on Sundays, online 9:30 or in person 9:30, 11:15. We would love to have you. And again, this is one of those things that I think when we think about it in a deeper way, it will grow our faith. We sometimes feel like complaining sometimes is one of those things that makes us a whiny person. But yet there's this powerful piece in lament that helps us grow spiritually, helps us connect with God, helps us have a heart more like God when we begin to see the trouble in the world the same way God does. And so I pray this morning that you have a great start that whenever you watch this video, that it causes you to pause and reflect, to ask of yourself and ask of God, and yield to what He's doing in this day. Have a great day, and we'll see you all tomorrow for our next day of our devotional.